rushed at University of Connecticut, I wanted to be a Delta Chi. And they had a mandatory system where you had to go and visit 3 chapters. You had to get a signature from 3 different fraternity chapters before you could accept a bid from any chapter of any fraternity. So I went and I met the Delta Chi guys, and I wanted to be a Delta Chi so badly. That's all I wanted was Delta Chi. But I needed 2 more signatures. So I went over to Zeta Psi, and I went over to another Chi Phi house. I got my signatures. Well, there was a guy at the Zeta Psi house from my hometown, Joe Wintz was his name, and he was a soccer player for the university. And he says, "Hey, good to see you. We come on for lunch tomorrow." Those kinds of things. But I knew I didn't want to be a Zeta Psi. I wanted to be a Delta Chi. So bid nights came out, and I did not get a bid from Delta Chi. They had a grade point average requirement, 3.0. You had to have a 3.0 grade point average, or they would not give you a bid. And I did not get a bid from Delta Chi, and I was crushed. So I didn't accept any bid. And 2 guys show up at my dormitory room that night. A guy named Opus. Opus is O-P-U-S, O-P-O-S, original piece of shit is his name. And Ed Jenkins. These guys have been my brothers forever. And had they not come and said to me, "Gee, we offered you a bid, you didn't take it, how come?" And I said, "Well, the truth is telling, I really wanted to be a Delta Chi." And they said, "Delta Chi, Schmelta Chi, you're a good guy, we like you, come on over tomorrow." I did. History has changed. Now here's how it ties to Delta Chi. I'm sitting next to the guy at Delta Chi at this North American Interfraternity Conference meeting, and he's talking about how terrible problems they're having fundraising. And I say, "Oh, I wanted to be a Delta Chi, and I just gave $1 million to Zeta Psi." Now I'm lying because I didn't, but it was great to stick the knife into the guy. So I'm in my pledge program, and my pledge brothers and I, there are 18 pledgemen. Going around, we'd gone out to Hartford, Connecticut, near the university, and we're pooling all our money. We're going to get some pizza and soda. And there's one brother, Benji Brumberg. I will never forget this. We have pooled our money. We've got all the pizzas, and everybody had enough money so that everybody could get 1 Coca-Cola. So we're drinking the Coca-Cola. Now, I was another 100 pounds heavier than I am now, very unhealthy. And I finish my Coca-Cola. I slam it down, and the pizzas aren't there yet. 20 minutes later, the pizzas come out. They're scalding hot. And Benji Brumberg just leans over without saying a word and pours me half of his Coca-Cola. And I said, "Holy smoke, if that's not a demonstration of brotherhood to a pledge." Something as tiny as that can make an impact. I mean, I have never forgotten it to this day. Tell me. I was an education major. I graduated from college, and I was a teacher, an elementary school teacher. So I did that for a few years. I'm making $7,200. I remember it vividly because my first contact with Zeta Psi fundraising, I was this new guy on the board, and Edison Dick was running he was chairing a capital campaign. And they came to me, and Edison, I don't know how much money Edison made, but he was an international lawyer in Washington, D.C. who did trade law. I'm sure it was more than $7,200 a year. And Edison says to me, "Doug," in his big bass voice, "Doug, we think you should donate $15,000. And of course he doesn't know, he's just asked me for more than 2 years' pay. 2 years' pay. So that's how I remember the $7,200. So here I am, I'm making $7,200 a year, and the board members are supposed to fly to New Orleans. So I fly to New Orleans, Louisiana on my own nickel and arrive at the board meeting, and I'm the puppy. And there's all these guys there that are investment bankers, and Bill Buck there owns the Phillies. I'm in with some big dogs. And I have $8 in my pocket. Literally, I have $8 in my pocket. So here I am. I'm this brand new board member, and I don't know, 22 or so, and I'm serving on the board. The Phi Alpha is a guy named Roy Folk. So Roy is an investment banker out of New York. There's 25 of us, and we're going to this famous restaurant in New Orleans, Breakfast at Brennan's, and it's really a brunch, and we're going to sit there for hours in this beautiful outdoor garden. And the one wave after food of another comes out. Well, I'm looking at the menu and the menu prices, and the only thing I can afford is a poached egg. I have $8 in my pocket, and a poached egg is $8. So I say, oh, no, I'm not hungry. I don't want anything, thanks. I'll just have maybe a poached egg would be all I want. Well, we sit there for about 3 hours, and the wave after wave of food comes out, and everybody says, Doug, aren't you going to eat anymore? No, really, I'm full. I'm stuffed. I had a whole poached egg. At the end of this time, out comes the waiter, and the waiter says, we have a special dessert for you. We're going to make bananas Foster. So it's the ice cream and this a sugar sauce with bananas and the alcohol, and it's flambé. And it's only $8. And they say, well, let's have 25 of us around the table. Let's have 25 orders. And I say, oh no, really, I'm stuffed. I don't want it. And of course, they bring out the bananas Foster, and they flame it, and everyone loves the bananas Foster. And then Roy Folk says, I'll get the check. And I shout, bring out the bananas Foster! So since that time, every time I meet the undergraduate representative or the brand new board member, I walk up to him and I say, look at this face. Whatever you need to order to eat, you come see me. I will get the check for whatever you're having. So that's my Breakfast at Brennan's story. So I changed jobs. I became you'd call it a traveling salesman, and my territory was the US and Canada. And I used my Zeta Psi contacts. As I would travel around North America, I would visit Zeta Brothers. Now, I must have visited, well, literally every chapter and 100 of my brothers as I traveled around the country in that job. Well, then I changed to become a Subway sandwich shop franchisee and later a developer of Subway restaurants. Well, my business partner is Steve Rogers. Steve Rogers and his wife Barbara Dupre are my business partners and have been for 31 years now. Steve's a Zeta from my chapter. The first guy in our investment group that got Zeta Psi started, that got Subway started in North Carolina is Pete Slomiani. Pete Slomiani's a former board of directors guy. He's a Zeta also from my chapter. We sent him to North Carolina. He opened the first Subway store in North Carolina, and now has some 600 stores that he works with down there as the Subway developer. So Zeta Psi and my business have been really tightly tied for a very long time. Very good. Okay. So talking about waiting in line. I'm playing tennis with Bill Buck, and I don't know if you know Bill. Bill is the majority owner of the Philadelphia Phillies. So I'm at his home, and we come driving out after playing tennis, and I said, Bill, it's like 10 minutes of game time. And I said, it's a 10-minute drive over to the stadium. And he says, yeah, I've got this down to a pretty much of a routine. And as we're driving up, the traffic's all gone because it's game time. And there's a cop out in the middle of the road just looking for Bill's car. And as soon as Bill arrives, this cop beckons him in. The wall of the stadium opens up. He drives his car inside the stadium. The wall closes behind him. The elevator to his suite is right there. We walk up. There's a butler with white gloves on. What would the gentleman care for? Now, I mean, that's living large, is running with those big dogs. So I get invited, I get a phone call from the guy, when I was president of the organization, my vice president, my Alpha Phi Alpha, is a guy named Jim Carey. Now, if you don't know Jim's a dynamic networker, powerful individual. Well, here he's a two-star admiral, and he's my vice president. So here I am. I would just say, Jim, take care of this for me. And he'd say, aye, aye, sir. And stuff, and you know, I knew I didn't have to worry about it. It was going to get done. Well, I get a phone call from Jim one day, and he says, Doug, I've got a tour arranged to go out onto the aircraft carrier, the Eisenhower. Can you get 4 Zetas to fly to Norfolk, Virginia tomorrow morning? And I said, aye, aye, sir. 4 of us show up down there. Jim's got us. We take off out of Norfolk, Virginia in this called a COD, a carrier onboard delivery aircraft. The 4 Zetas are there. We fly out. We land on the aircraft carrier. They know one of us is an admiral. They don't know which one. We're getting treated like we're the king and queen of the universe. We go marching in. Jim stays in the captain's cabin. Now, the captain's cabin on an aircraft carrier, he's got a dining room table that'll seat 12. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. They invite us in. They still don't know which one's the admiral. There's a steward there, white gloves, a Filipino guy who says, would the admiral, and he's looking at us like, which one's going to answer me? Would the admiral like lemonade and sandwiches? And Jim says, yes, we would. And at that point, that's the first time I think they knew who the admiral was. But I want to tell you the one quick story of the safety lecture as we take off. You've all been on airplanes, and the airplane, there's 2 exits, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and 2 over wing. And do this, bing. Well, the safety lecture, this guy, he walks in a helmet. He's got a full helmet on, and he says, all right, if we crash and I'm alive, follow me. If we crash and I'm dead, get out of here. Magical, just magical. Well, I'm talking about Jim Youngland. Let me tell you one quick story. When I was a puppy on the board of directors, Jim was the Gamma Alpha, so he's the treasurer, and I'm sitting next to him at this meeting. There's 25 guys. I don't belong there. I'm an elementary school teacher, and I'm in amongst all these titans of industry. And somebody asks Jim a question, and Jim says, that's a very good question. And he reaches into his briefcase, and he pulls out 22 copies of the answer to that question, and he passes them out. And I'm sitting next to him, and I said, holy smoke, talk about a guy being prepared. And anything else? Somebody else asks a question. Jim says, that's a very good question. Pulls out 22 pre-printed copies of the answer to that question. And I glance down, and he's got like 20 of these things in a file folder ready to go. But they only asked 3 questions, so he only pulls out 3. He doesn't have to show off how smart this is. He's the smartest guy I've ever met in my life, Dr. Youngland, but he never had to show off. When you meet Jim Youngland, you will be in awe. If you're not in awe, ask him a question. Young guys ask me sometimes for advice. And how do you be successful? Well, I told you, I flunked out of college as a freshman. And the reason I did is because I didn't do any work. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. It really slapped me around, and I knew, okay, I don't want to live on peanuts for the rest of my life. So I came back and I worked. And I have a very simple system, very simple. I call it 10-7-7 or 10-7-7. You work 10 hours a day, you party 7 hours a day, you sleep 7 hours a day, you got your 24. And I contend that if you go to class for 3 and study for 7, you're going to do well. And if you go to class for 7 and only study for 3, you're going to do well. In my mind, that is the key, is 10-7-7.